Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today, we are going to learn about some elegant etching, which is a really cool technique that I just learned about this year using a Cricut machine, creating some different stencils. And then once you have these stencils, there's an etching cream I'm going to be using called Armour Etch. And you're just going to put the etching cream onto the stencil, let it sit there for about 3 minutes, wash it off with some water, and believe it or not, that's all you need to do in order to create some really beautiful customized glassware. So I have lots of things to show you. There is a PDF that goes along with this class when you signed up that shows you how to find the designs that I'm going to be using today in class. Rashmi just put it into the chat for you. So if you're here with me live, thanks for coming, and it's really good to see you. I also want to let you know that coming up next week, I have a couple more classes. So I'll be teaching how to crochet. So if you've ever wanted to dabble into learning how to make a granny square and some of the basics of crochet stitches, I'm going to be teaching that class next week. I'm also going to be teaching a class where you can personalize your tumblers. So if you're really into tumblers right now, if that's your thing, I can show you how to make them stand out in the crowd. And I'm also going to be teaching a class next week, getting ready for Easter. That's going to be cookie decorating. So very basic cookie decorating, nothing too terribly fancy, but just kind of dipping and dripping and using some different colors in order to create some different designs. So kind of an easier icing class just to kind of get some Easter egg-like cookies. So those are all coming up. But today we have an exciting class doing our elegant etching. And I'm going to show you the machine. I'm going to show you some stuff on Design Space. So if you've ever used Cricut before, you have a leg up. If you've never used Cricut before, this might be a little bit advanced for you, but we have lots of videos on YouTube already available of how to really get started at the very basics with your Cricut, but we'll see what we do. Feel free to ask me questions and I'll do the best I can to answer them in the chat and talk out loud. And this will be recorded and it will be available on YouTube early next week on Monday, since today is a Friday. So you can always watch this again and pause it or rewind it if you missed something, or if you actually have your machine out and ready to cut later rather than right now, you can do it along with me then. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to try and show you how to open up the designs in Design Space. So we'll see how this goes. I've never tried this part before. All right, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So when you first open up Design Space is Cricut, and it is where all the different designs live. So lots of different artists, Cricut themselves have uploaded all kinds of designs into this Design Space. So it's a big giant library of things that you can cut using your Cricut SVG files. So I'm at the top left-hand corner where I have this search bar, and I'm going to type in my name, which is Meghan Fahey, Fahey, very Irish, and I'm going to hit enter. And when I go down on my desktop, you're going to see community members. So community members, and there I am, Meghan Fahey. When I click on me, you're going to see some of the different designs that I've already shared with the community. So these are some designs that I've used for different projects or had different friends help me with, and then I was able to share these with you. So we have the elegant etching designs right here, or we have free etches. So why I put two different things here is because in Design Space, there's lots of free fonts, there's lots of free images, but there are also a lot of other fonts and a lot of other images that you need Cricut Access, which is their subscription, in order to access those. So some of the designs in the elegant etching are going to be available with an Access subscription. If you don't have an Access subscription and you don't want to get one right now, you can use the free etches in the other design file that I've given you, so that you don't have to worry about buying any kind of subscriptions. So I kind of gave you two different offers. But here are a bunch of the different things that I have used to do some etching. So you'll notice that a lot of these are kind of wedding themed, because I think these make really beautiful gifts. If you have a shower, wedding shower, baby shower, any kind of shower coming up. If you have one of these special moments, anniversaries, or weddings coming up, it's such a cool gift to maybe do a monogram with somebody's initials on it, or to make one of these for a bridesmaid if you're going to ask someone to be in your wedding. So there's lots of cool designs that I've already kind of pulled together in a collection here. And you'll notice on Design Space that I have an Explore 2 at home. And so that's the machine that's hooked up to my desktop right now. And you'll see all of these different designs. I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to cancel this for now, and I'm going to go back and customize. So if you see all of these designs, you can cut these designs and you can have all of this different collection. But if you know exactly which one you want to cut, then you can make the other ones disappear and only cut that specific one. So I know that today I'm going to use this Cheers design. So I think I know where it is, but we'll see. So I'm hiding over here. I'm taking the vision, the eyeball, and I'm putting an X through it. And I'm hiding the designs that I'm not going to be using, narrowing it down. Oh, there it is. So this is the Cheers design right here. So I'm going to leave that one visible, and I'm going to make all of the other designs invisible. If you have questions, if you're with me live and you want to ask me something, please go ahead and put that in the chat and I'll try and answer it for you. So I've made all the other designs invisible, and I only have my Cheers design visible. So I can go to my Make button, and I am connected to my machine. So I'm going to go ahead and take a mat because I have a Cricut Explore 2. And I'm going to be using some removable vinyl. Am I on my overhead shot also, or just the screen share? Probably just the screen share. Okay, so I'm going to be taking a piece of vinyl and I'm going to go ahead and put it onto my mat. And I'm going to be getting my machine ready. And I'm going to press continue on my screen. And I have just the Cheers ready to go. And I have an Explore 2, so this is what it looks like when it shows up. And I have my settings set to vinyl, and I am ready to go. So on my machine, I'm clicking the blinking arrow, and I'll show you this in just a moment when I stop sharing my screen. And then I'm going to have a blinking light on my machine that I'm going to go ahead and press in order to make this cut. So I think you can see my machine now. I had a blinking arrow on it with the import export kind of button getting this mat ready. And you'll see that I just took a scrap of removable vinyl. It's important that it's removable because you don't want permanent vinyl, because this is a stencil. It's not a permanent piece of vinyl. So I have removable vinyl on my mat. I'm putting my mat in the machine. I've imported it. And I have my Cricut button flashing now, so it's ready to cut. So I go ahead and cut it. And we'll see how it goes. Ooh, it's working. So right now I'm cutting the stencil that's going to look like this one that I already pre-cut, and it just says Cheers on it. I'm going to put that stencil onto a glass. These are stemless glasses that we sell, stemless wine glasses that we sell at Michael's. They're Celebrated brand. We also have other kinds of glassware that you could also do this on. You could do it on vases. If you want to make a nice floral arrangement with somebody's monogram or initials, you could do that. Or you can even do it on like a mason jar. As long as it's a smooth, solid surface, you can use that. This etching cream that I'm going to be using today does not play well with Pyrex, and it really only works on glass. So our cut is just about finished. And we've just created a stencil that quick. So if you were going to do more of the stencils, if you wanted to cut a lot of different choices at once, it's going to take a little bit longer, but it really didn't take very long to do just that one. So by hiding all the other designs, now I just have this one. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my other camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Thank you. And I have it on this mat. I'm going to take the removable vinyl off of this mat. And I'm going to use a scissor to kind of trim this down and see what I have. Now, one of the tricky things with weeding vinyl, if you've ever done any kind of Cricut or cutting projects, is you got to have some good eyeballs to be able to see these cuts. Or you got to have some good lighting if you don't have good eyeballs. So hopefully you can see, I'll kind of tilt this, you can see that stencil design. And I did go ahead and put, it's upside down, there we go. I did go ahead and put a square or a rectangle around this piece. So we're going to take a weeding tool. So this is a weeding tool. There's Make Market weeding tools. There's Cricut weeding tools. There's lots of places you can get these tools from. And it has this pokey edge to it. And I'm going to grab some of this extra around the rectangle and pull that off. So that rectangle is a part of the design that I created so that you have a nice smooth surface all the way around it. And because this is a stencil, what we're going to be doing with the stencil is we're going to be taking out the letters, because then when we place this stencil onto our glassware, the letters are the things that are going to get etched into the glass. So here's what I'm about to start weeding. And let me kind of show you what we're trying to do. So here's another version. What we're about to do on this piece that I just cut is we're going to weed out the letters, the cheers letters. And notice when you're weeding it out, you need to leave the insides of the letter E and be really careful with your H so that you leave that little space, but leave everything else where it goes. And then this is a one-piece kind of removable sticker that we can peel up and we can place on our glassware. Or if you don't trust it, or if you have a lot of intricate designs in here, we can use transfer tape in order to put it on a piece of glass. And then we have our stencil ready to etch.
Megan, sorry to interrupt. There's a question by LJ. She's asking, will it work on crystal?
Oh, I don't believe that it will work on crystal. So when you get this Armour etch, the stencils, these particular stencils, I would say could be reused a couple times, but not a lot of times. I wouldn't use this etching cream on crystal. I don't believe that that would work. I'm sure there might be other creams out there that do work with that. There are a lot of warnings on this, so you do need to be careful. This is definitely not a kid's craft. This is definitely for responsible adults like us. And so you are going to need to be careful because there are some pretty strong warning symbols on this bottle. And if you can imagine, we're taking a cream and we're putting it on glass and it's etching it. So if it's powerful enough to etch the glass with that cream is pretty powerful and you need to be careful with it. So I will be using gloves later. And I will be working near running water because once you have it on the stencil for a little bit, sitting there, it's doing its work. It's chemically altering the glass by making those little etches in it chemically. Then we're going to wipe off the etching cream and then it's going to be completely etched. And they can go through the dishwasher. So there's lots more information on the Armour Etch website, but they can go through the dishwasher. They are still normal glasses. They should still hold up to everything else that they would normally stand up to. And you just have this really beautiful design on it. So the stencils, I think are probably just 1 or 2 time use because once the stickiness on the back wears out, then I don't think you're going to be able to continue to use it. I don't recommend using a paper stencil because a paper stencil definitely won't withhold the water that we're going to pour onto it in order to clear it off. And also the paper stencil is going to be really hard to keep in the right place on the glass. So all of this etching is meant to be small pieces. It's not meant to etch the entire surface. So you always want to work in small pieces that are not very thick. So I think they say no larger than a quarter size in any one of these different patches. You don't want to do something too much bigger than that. So it's great for monogramming, but probably not great for covering the entire thing. So I have this cutout of the word cheers, and I'm going to show you how I weed that using this Cricut weeding tool. So I kind of use the pointy edge of my weeding tool to pick at the vinyl and just pull that vinyl up and away from the stencil. And then I usually have a little trash pile off to the side that I'm collecting all these sticky pieces. So I'm poking into the vinyl, and then I'm carefully pulling that vinyl away to leave that blank space. And that blank space is what's going to be used for the etching part. So on this one, I'm going to remove the letter E, but I'm going to leave the inside of the letter E. That's going to be important. I'm going to pull up the next E and leave that center. The R and the S. So because I have these these spaces inside of the E's, I am going to use a little bit of transfer tape because I want to keep these in the right position when I transfer this sticker or this stencil onto my glass. So I have a little bit of transfer tape, and you're going to want to cut a similar size rectangle to what you have. So I'm cutting a piece of my transfer paper to be a similar size to the rectangle I'm working with. And with the transfer tape, you have something that we call the backing paper. And this backing paper can peel up, maybe with my fingers. So I'm kind of going into the corner and I'm peeling off the backing paper to remove this and just have this sticky adhesive. So right now the adhesive is sticky side up. I'm going to flip it over and put the adhesive sticky side down towards the stencil. And then you'll see that I'm kind of smoothing this on here. If you have one of the scraper tools, you can use a scraper tool, or you can use the side of something else too, just to kind of make sure that that's all attached to the transfer tape. So I've put that on. And now I'm going to remove the backing paper of the stencil itself so that just the stencil is going to be left on the transfer tape. So I'm carefully removing this, making sure that, see, this E is trying to pop up here. So I need to make sure that the center of that E is in the right spot. So I'm rubbing on this to kind of make sure that it's in the right spot this time. There we go. So now that center is there. And everything else is where it needs to be. Perfect. So this is the sticky side is up right now, and it looks backwards, but that's okay because we're about to flip it over when we adhere it to the glass. You want to pick your positioning on the glass. Now this is a removable stencil, so technically if you put it in the wrong place, you can technically pull it back up, but it probably is going to have a little bit of sticky residue and you might need to wipe down your glass and start again. But you're going to find a good position for it. I recommend somewhere middle to bottom, not towards the lip of the glass. You never want to have your personalization too close to the lip of the glass because you don't want anything to be near your mouth. And you can kind of find the spot for this. And I'm just carefully adhering it. Now, because the glassware is round, you might get a couple of bubbles, and that's okay. When we peel this back up, we're going to make sure that everything is solid And even if it has some ripples in it, it still has the solid letters in the correct places. So I'm going to go ahead and take this transfer tape, make sure that I'm kind of going and rubbing over the stencil to keep the stencil in the right place. There we go. And if I am going too fast, or if you're having a hard time keeping up, this video will be available on Mondays, so you can watch it on YouTube and try it again. Now I'm going to peel up the transfer tape and see if I can keep the stencil where it needs to be. And just like last time when I'm peeling up the stencil, I'm being careful to make sure that like those pieces that were like the centers of the E's stay where they need to stay. And I don't pull those up accidentally. So I'm kind of rolling the stencil as I go to make sure that everything stays where it needs to be. And I am pulling up these extra little cuts. This transfer tape is reusable. You could reuse this again. Put it back on the backing paper and you should be able to use it a couple more times. I have these extra cuts that I'm going to remove. There we go. And then I'm going to go through, and because I have these ripples, I'm going to be really careful that I make sure that they're nice and solidly pressed against the glass so that no etching cream falls in those cracks and accidentally etches something we don't want it to etch. So I'm pushing these down and making sure that there's no space for the etching cream to slide under my stencil. So I'm pressing these ripples down with one of my tools again and making sure that like the edges of the letters are nice and flush with the glass. And you're about to see some magic with this etching cream. The first couple of times I used it, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. How does this do this? This is really, really amazing. So you're about to see some magic. It will take, it says on the bottle 1 to 3 minutes. Other etching creams, other brands could take as long as 15 minutes, but it really, you apply it and you use it in the same way. And it just might take a little bit longer for the chemical reaction to happen, but you're about to see this live. And then we'll use some running water. I'm gonna simulate a sink as best I can at my desk, so we'll see how that goes. And I'm gonna show you what it looks like when we're all finished. So I have put the stencil down really nicely. And I like that it has this rectangle. I don't want my etching cream to go below the rectangle at any point because that's going to accidentally etch whatever it's going to touch. So now is the time for me to wear some gloves. And rubber gloves would be best. So if you have like some dishwashing gloves, that would be ideal. I'm going to wear both just to make sure that I'm nice and safe. I'm also working in a really well ventilated room. So I have lots of fans going, moving air around. You also might want to consider wearing a mask because it is a bad thing to inhale or to inhale too much of. So be careful with all of that. Read all of your instructions because these are not messing around. These are very serious instructions. Just right here, this says danger causes burns, which may not be immediately painful or visible and may cause permanent damage to skin. Do not mess around with this. They are not messing around. So I'm going to open up this etching cream and I'm going to be using a wooden stick. So some kind of popsicle stick, craft stick. You could use a paintbrush, but you probably don't want to mess up one of your paintbrushes with this. And I'm going to open the etching cream, being very careful with it, of course. And you're going to take some globs with your stick and you're going to generously glob this etching cream over the stencil. trying not to go outside of the rectangle. And this is a pretty generous glob. I'm keeping this away from my mouth and nose while I'm working on it so as not to inhale any of this. And again, it would be wise to use masks, especially if you're doing a lot of this, more than one piece. You might want to also consider doing it outside, just making sure that you have a nice ventilated place. And it's not a toothpaste texture, but it's not paint. It's somewhere in between those two. And you will notice that the mixture itself has little granules in it. And those little granules are the chemicals that are doing the etching. So they're mixing with the glass, and then they'll eventually have the water too to wash all of this back off of your glass. But I'm just making sure that I go over everything with a generous helping using my wooden stick, making sure I get the bottom but not go off the rectangle. And I can kind of feel like the graininess when I'm running my wooden stick across this. So here we go. And I feel pretty good about covering the entire word, not having any spaces. Oops, maybe right here at the bottom. And having more than enough kind of globby all over it. I'm going to put this stick to the side. What's also crazy and good about this etching cream is that when I'm done with this, I can take my stick and remove the excess and put it back in the jar and actually use that same exact glop again later on. So that's kind of cool that this one little bottle can last you a very, very long time. Because once you get some of the excess up, and if you want to put it back in the bottle, you can. Then I'm going to run some running water over the top of the rest of it to clear it off. And then we can remove that stencil. So I'm going to start a clock, and in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to come back to this and we're going to remove this, and I'm going to rinse it down with some water. And I'm going to show you what the final result is. So this is going to be a grand reveal for all of us. I don't know what's going to happen. Could be anything. So if we don't mind going back to the front facing camera, if anybody is on here and has some questions about the Cricut machine, about the stencils, about anything like that, I would love to answer any of those questions while we're kind of waiting on this. And I can talk to you some more about some of the Cricut machines. You might see in the background those paper flowers back there. So I taught a class using the Cricut machine, I think it was a couple weeks ago, about how to make those beautiful paper flowers. So this machine can do lots of things. So today we're using it to cut stencils. So you can imagine that that same removable stencil, you can use this and you can put it down on a tote bag, and then you can paint a tote bag and peel off that stencil. So using a Cricut in order to create these removable stencils is one really great application of the Cricut. But you can imagine that we can also put in some cardstock, and you can make some petals, and then we can put those petals together in order to create some of those beautiful paper roses and paper peonies. I've also used my Cricut to personalize different things. So if you have something like a tumbler and you want it to have your initial on it, you would use the permanent vinyl instead of the removable vinyl that we're using today. And the permanent vinyl, if you put it on something that can go in the dishwasher, Cricut has tested it that you can put it through the dishwasher a lot of times and it still stays, it won't come back up. So the permanent vinyl is permanent. It will go through the dishwasher and it won't just rip up. So that's really nice. But today we were using the removable vinyl. You'll see on the back of your pieces of vinyl what kind of vinyl it is. So this one is the Cricut removable, which means that it's just easier to peel on and off once you put it down. It can be readjusted a little bit, Whereas the permanent vinyl, once it goes down and it's set, it's permanent. So you can keep that in mind. I think I'm going to wait just another 30, 40 seconds. And I'm going to attempt, never seen on TV, me trying to pour water over to a thing to simulate a kitchen sink because I'm not in my kitchen right now. So I am curious to see how this next part is going to go and if I make a giant mess or if it's successful. So my makeshift kitchen sink is going to be this bucket, these bottles of water. This is not bottled water. You don't need bottled water. I just so happen to have it contained this way so that I can pour it over the glass. I am going to clean up. Well, I'm not actually going to clean up that space yet because I'm going to put some of the excess cream back into the jar. But I do have all my gloves. This is going to be the basin of my sink. So there's a question in the chat that says, can you use etching cream on colored glass? I think so, but I'm not positive. So I would check on whatever brand of etching cream you're using. So I'm using Armour Etch. Check on their website and they'll have even more information about what products they've already tested it on. So they know it doesn't work on Pyrex or it doesn't work very well on Pyrex, but it does work well on this kind of glass or this kind of glass. So I recommend that. Also, another thing I want to point out is that there are craft paints that are called multi-surface craft paints that you can, like once you have something etched, you could put a little bit of paint over top of it. And if you wanted to use a color, you could. And then with a damp cloth, kind of immediately pull it back up. And just that little bit of paint can go into the etching and kind of stay there. And then I know with a lot of the different multi-surface paints, there's directions on them that say that you can bake them in the oven in order to keep them permanent. So you could try that if you wanted to add some color to your etch rather than having the etch be on a colored piece of glass. Maybe your etch itself could add a little bit of color. So that's another thing that you could try. All right, it's time. We're gonna see what happens. Here we go. I am putting my gloves back on. Great question. I see in the chat, if you don't have the machine, can you pre-cut stencils with transfer paper? Absolutely. Anything, you can cut your own stencils onto something that has a sticky adhesive backing and you can put it on. You can also buy pre-cut stencils that have an adhesive backing. Can you make multiple stencils of parts of the same picture so you could stencil different colors? Oh, yes. So you can cut several of the same thing, and then maybe one time you're going to do a layer in one color and then maybe offset it and do another layer of color. Absolutely. You can absolutely do that onto a bag, onto a t-shirt. It's kind of like a screen printing technique. Okay, I am ready to go back to my overhead. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm going to take some of this excess and I'm literally scooping it off and putting it into the jar. So I'm taking some excess, scooping it back into the jar. And you don't have to get all of it, but it's nice that you can actually reuse this and it's going to keep all of its qualities. And it's nice to not have as much being rinsed or washed. There we go. So I feel pretty good about what I've been able to take up. And I'm going to close this jar back up and put it off to the side. And then I am going to go ahead and try to rinse this off. I'm going to make sure that I put this in something safe over here. And here we go. All right. I'm gonna take one of my bottles of water. So I'm wearing gloves that have some rubber or some plastic on them. So dishwashing gloves would be lovely if you have those. And I am just rinsing. So pretend like this is at my sink, and I'm just doing a nice rinse of what's already on here. And you can, as long as you have gloves, kind of use your finger to kind of help get some of that moving and get that cleared off of your glass. So if I wasn't holding onto this bottle, I'd have both hands to kind of be working this together at the same time. So at this point, if some of the cream is getting into different places, it's okay because it's not going to sit there for very long. We're going to immediately take it back off. It's just that if it sits for that minute and it's off of the stencil, then it's going to be etched in. All right, I have a very old rag I'm going to kind of use. So I would do more water if I was at my sink. And I'm going to try and use a second water bottle to kind of keep this going and get this back off. Here we go. Ooh, that's good. I can tell that it's clearing up. And what's crazy about this whole process is you don't see, it still looks exactly the same. You don't see that it's been etched. It doesn't magically look dramatically different than how it looked a couple of minutes ago. But when I start to peel off the stencil, you're going to see how dramatically different this looks with that etch. So let's see if I can pull this up with these gloves on. I don't want to keep rinsing this to make sure I get more of that. I can see the cream. So this would be better, obviously, at a sink than at a desktop makeshift kitchen sink. Going to kind of wipe this down, make sure that it's not going to stay in some place I don't want it to stay. And then I am going to peel off the corner. See if I can get this. Oh, I can use one of my tools. Silly me. So I'm kind of reaching under the corner to grab that, one of my tools, and I can already see the difference. It might be hard to see on camera, but I'm going to show you, don't worry. So I'm pulling up that stencil, and I have these little bits still left that I need to pull up. There we go. And there we go. Nice. And I'm going to kind of rinse this down again. Here I'm not doing any accidental etching. Use my towel a little bit. Ooh, it's so cool. I can already tell. So let's see if you can see it. So you can see that cheers is etched into there. Let me remove my bucket. And I'll show you again. So cool. All right. So let me use this black background. I think you can see it. It looks in person. It definitely looks even more prominent, but you can see that word cheers etched into the glass. And if you were to touch it, after I've rinsed it plenty and gotten rid of all the etching cream, it would be okay for you to touch it. And you can tell that the spaces, it's a little bit of a different texture where the word cheers is compared to, oh, that's good. Maybe you can see it that way. That it's a little bit of a different texture there because it has chemically altered that glass right there and etched it into it. So this is our elegant glass etching, and you can use lots of different stencils to create lots of different things. And you can kind of see both, oh, I can see it now. how both of those designs are showing up just make for really beautiful gifts, really beautiful pops of extra something special at a special occasion. Maybe it's a New Year's party, maybe it's a wedding, maybe it's a baby shower, anything you want to do a special toast or special cheers. You can have your cheers already etched into your glass and you can have that moment in time. So that's all that I have for you today. If you have other questions about this, one question was, does it get more prominent with time? And I would say yes, you're going to be able to see this a little bit better once I kind of let it dry. And definitely when I put it into different light, you're going to see it better. And like I said before, if you want it to pop even more, you could run a little bit of white paint over it and then immediately take the white paint back off. And the white paint's going to kind of get into some of those cracks and be able to make that a little bit darker and a little bit more permanent. So there we have it, our elegant etching. I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Rashmi.
Thank you. Bye.